Basketball has always worshipped size, chasing the tallest and longest players it could find because the game seemed built to reward giants. So what happens when you hand a basketball to someone who breaks that rule completely? A kid barely 6 feet tall, weighing about as much as the Towel Boys, who hated to work out but possessed a first step so violent it left grown men grabbing at empty air.
Iverson breaks the ankles of Lively. Crossover from Iverson, nose and eyes.
I think for a guy his size, he was the most intimidating player in the NBA. But I've never in my life, never played with a player that played as hard as him on the court. I would choose Kobe Bryant to put 60 on me before guarding a 60 from Allen Iverson.
I think Allen Iverson had the biggest influence on the game of basketball than anybody.
This is the story of Allen Iverson, and to understand how one of the smallest players in the sport bent an entire league around him, we have to go back to 1975. On June 7th of that year, Allen Iverson was born in Hampton, Virginia, to a mother named Ann who was just 15 years old at the time. There was no money, no safety net, and no father in the picture to lean on. Ann would soon move her young son to nearby Newport News into the home of a man named Michael Freeman, who became the closest thing to a father figure Allen ever had. But Freeman drifted in and out of trouble and eventually in and out of prison, and the household he was supposed to anchor slowly fell apart.
My dad was in and out of jail most of my life. I actually seen him get arrested. I was hurt because I felt like you going back to jail again.
Allen grew up in conditions most people cannot imagine, in a home where sewage sometimes backed up through the floors and the heat got shut off in the winter.
It was tough being from the projects. Sometimes there wasn't no food. Most of the time we didn't have lights or water. The house that I left had the sewer and the water in the house was about this high. You can hear squish, squish, squish.
He would later say he learned to sleep through gunshots the way other kids learn to sleep through rain. Yet inside all that hardship, something rare was taking shape. Allen wasn't just a good athlete, he was a genetic outlier, the kind of freak who comes along once in a generation. By the time he reached Bethel High School, he was the best football player anyone in the region had ever seen, and the best basketball player too.
He was first-team All-State as a quarterback and safety, and the best player in the state.
It was just my first love. It was the first game that I fell in love with. My versatility, you know what I mean, being able to play so many different positions, and having, I think more of an impact on the game because I was able to play on both sides of the ball.
Which almost never happens in the same body. As a quarterback and defensive back, he was electric, breaking off long runs, throwing on the move, and closing on ball carriers like a heat-seeking missile. As a point guard, he was untouchable. In his junior year, he led Bethel to state championships in both sports, and he was named the Associated Press Player of the Year in both football and basketball across the entire state of Virginia during the same school year. Think about how absurd that is. Colleges across the country weren't just recruiting him, they were arguing over which sport he should even play, and dozens of programs dangled full rides in front of him. Here's a detail most people forget. Football was actually his first love, and for a long stretch of his childhood, his dream wasn't the NBA at all. He wanted to play quarterback for Notre Dame. Many scouts genuinely believed his ceiling on the gridiron was even higher than his ceiling on the hardwood, because the raw athletic tools he carried in that small frame were simply not normal. For a kid who slept through gunfire and grew up watching the adults around him get swallowed by the streets, sports were the one clean path out. And he had two of them. Everything was pointing toward an escape. And then on Valentine's Day of 1993, all of it nearly disappeared. That night, 17-year-old Allen went to the Circle Lanes bowling alley in Hampton with a group of friends. A verbal argument between his group and a group of white teenagers escalated into a full brawl with chairs thrown and several people hurt.
A chairs throwing brawl which injured half a dozen people at this bowling alley.
I seen chairs flying, bowling alley pens. My friend Dwayne was like, let's go. And somehow or another, we end up getting up out of there.
When the police arrived and the dust settled, only 4 people were arrested, and all 4 of them were the black teenagers, including Allen.
70-some people in a bowling alley. How do you pick 4 individuals
I'm the only one that everybody in there know. Given 15 years for actual fight, no guns, no knives.
And the video shows you walking out of the room.
What came next stunned even people who followed the case closely. Prosecutors charged Iverson under a statute called maiming by mob, a law originally written after the Civil War to protect black citizens from being lynched by white mobs. The law didn't even require proof that Allen had thrown a single punch. It only required that he be present. He was tried as an adult, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years, with a portion suspended, meaning he was staring down the possibility of losing the best years of his life to a cell. So the most gifted teenage athlete in Virginia found himself behind the walls of the Newport News City Farm Correctional Facility, watching his future evaporate while his classmates went off to sign scholarships.
I've got so many bags of letters, football and basketball coaches all over the country. But when this happened to him, they stopped calling.
The case tore his hometown of Hampton in half along racial lines, with one side certain he was a thug getting exactly what he deserved, and the other side certain he was a target being made an example of because of his fame and his skin. It became such a firestorm that a famous musician from the area, Bruce Hornsby, personally reached out to Iverson's high school coach to ask how he could help, and even invited the teenager to his home. But none of that outside support could change where Allen was sleeping at night. He served 4 months at the city farm before the pressure of the case, which had drawn national attention and accusations of blatant racial injustice, finally broke through. On December 30th, 1993, Virginia Governor Douglas Wilder granted Iverson conditional clemency, and he walked free.
Governor Wilder gave me another shot at life. You know, if it wasn't for his signature, I might not be here.
2 years later, in 1995, the Virginia Court of Appeals overturned the conviction entirely, ruling that there simply wasn't enough evidence to prove he was part of any mob at all. But by then, the damage to his reputation had been done, and here's the part that should have ended his career before it started. Then, because of the arrest, the trial, and the label that came with it, the college programs that had once fought over him vanished. The scholarships dried up, the phone stopped ringing. Nobody wanted to take the risk. Allen finished high school at an alternative school for at-risk kids, and it seemed like the athletic freak from Hampton was going to become just another cautionary tale. So who was willing to bet on him? The answer came from the one person who never stopped believing. Ann Iverson, Allen's mother, refused to let her son's story end in silence.
No other teams, no other schools or recruit me anymore. My mom went to Georgetown and begged him to give me a chance. And he did.
She personally reached out to John Thompson, the towering head coach of the Georgetown Hoyas, a man with a reputation for taking in talented young players others had written off, and she asked him face to face to give her son a chance. Thompson listened, he looked past the headlines, and he did what no one else would do. He offered Allen Iverson a scholarship to play Division I basketball at one of the most respected programs in the country. That single decision changed the entire trajectory of the sport, but the question remained. Could a kid who had just spent 4 months in a correctional facility, who had barely played organized basketball in over a year, actually compete at that level? It didn't take long to find out. This was no small act of faith on Thompson's part. Georgetown was a program famous for producing dominant big men, having sent giants like Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, and Dikembe Mutombo into the NBA. And here was Thompson betting his reputation on a 6-foot guard with a criminal record and a cloud of controversy over his head. But Thompson didn't just coach Iverson, he protected him, mentored him, and became the father figure Allen had never truly had. That bond would last the rest of Thompson's life. And Iverson would later say, the coach saved him in every way a person can be saved.
Coach Thompson gave me an opportunity when nobody in the world would, and believed in me, and basically saved my life.
From the moment Iverson stepped onto the floor for Georgetown, it was clear the college game had never seen anything like him.
You don't look at somebody that's flyweight like Allen and associate that with strength, but he's proven that theory totally wrong.
Is that 1-2-1-1 pressure? Iverson, light to the court, right the other way. And he gets to the basket. He's so explosive.
He was a blur, faster with the ball than most players were without it, and he attacked much bigger opponents, like he was daring them to stop him. As a freshman in the 1994-1995 season, he was named the Big East Rookie of the Year, and he did something almost unheard of for a guard that small. He was named the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, using his blinding speed and his quick hands to terrorize opposing ball handlers. Then he did it again. In the 1995-1996 season, Iverson won Defensive Player of the Year for a second straight time while averaging around 23 points a game and dragging Georgetown to a Big East championship. Over just 2 years, he set the school record for career scoring average at 22.9 points a game, a number that outshone every legendary big man who had ever worn the jersey. He earned first-team All-American honors and turned himself into one of the most electrifying players in the entire country. He had walked into Georgetown as a reclamation project and was walking out as one of the most coveted prospects in America. So after just 2 seasons, with his stock as high as it would ever be, Iverson made the decision to leave Georgetown early and declare for the 1996 NBA draft. But even after everything he had proven, one enormous doubt still hung over him. Could a 6-foot guard really survive in a league built for giants? On June 26, 1996, the Philadelphia 76ers held the #1 overall pick, and they were a franchise in desperate need of hope, coming off a miserable 18-64 season under new leadership that had just taken over the team. The 1996 draft class would go down as one of the greatest ever assembled, loaded with future legends and Hall of Famers, including a high schooler named Kobe Bryant, sharpshooter Ray Allen, and point guards Stephon Marbury and Steve Nash. Out of that entire golden generation, when NBA Commissioner David Stern stepped to the podium, the very first name he read belonged to Allen Iverson.
With the first pick in the 1996 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Allen Iverson from Georgetown University.
It was like someone stepped on a detonator and all the explosion of energy and pride came back into the city.
In that instant, Iverson made history. At a generously listed 6 feet tall and only around 165 pounds, he became the shortest and lightest #1 overall pick the league had ever seen. Critics immediately questioned the decision, arguing that a player his size would get swallowed up by the physicality of the professional game, that he would break down, that his flashy style would never translate to real winning. Iverson had heard doubt his entire life, and he answered it the only way he knew how. He decided to make the whole league feel his presence. The 1996-1997 season began, and even though the 76ers were still a losing team, Iverson turned every night into an event. In his very first NBA game, he dropped 30 points.
A stunning NBA debut with 30 points. You could see it as soon as it left his hand. Tonight, the first night of a revolution.
But the moment that announced his arrival to the world came on March 12, 1997, against the Chicago Bulls, a team on its way to 69 wins and another title. Late in that game, the greatest player alive, Michael Jordan, switched on to the rookie one-on-one.
Once he came out there, I would want to put my man to the test. It was Mike. The greatest player that ever played the game. I told my teammates at Georgetown, if I ever got a chance to try it on the greatest player ever, I was going to.
And the entire building held its breath. Iverson gave Jordan a small crossover to test him, then unleashed a crossover so quick and so cruel that Jordan, at the absolute peak of his powers, froze for a split second.
Watch this. Nice play.
Tell me about the little guy's crossover.
Very quick. He handles the ball very well. With this crossover, they do allow him to
and pick the ball up and carry it pretty high. I figured that he wanted to come back to his right hand, but he keeps the ball real low. And he's small, and he's certainly closer to the ground than I am. So, I mean, his quickness is unbelievable.
That fraction of a second was all Iverson needed to rise up and bury the jumper right in his hero's face. A rookie had just made the greatest player of all time look ordinary, and Iverson was only getting started. I mean, later that season, he did something not even Michael Jordan had done as a rookie. He scored at least 40 points in 5 consecutive games, breaking a rookie record that had belonged to Wilt Chamberlain for 37 years, capping the streak with a 50-point explosion against Cleveland.
Allen Iverson with 39 in the second half and 50 for the night.
Straight with 40 or more, breaking a rookie record, capping it with 50 in dramatic fashion on Saturday night.
He finished the year averaging 23.5 points, 7.5 assists, and over 2 steals a game, and he was named Rookie of the Year. The Freak had passed his first test, but even in triumph, the criticism found him. Some accused him of padding his numbers during that 40-point streak just to chase the Rookie of the Year trophy, and it revealed the tension that would follow him his whole career. The sense that a player so small and so flashy could never be taken seriously as a winner. Iverson answered with the only philosophy he ever knew. He said he played every single game like it was his last, and he meant it literally. He threw his 165-pound body into the teeth of the defense night after night.
I play hard every night, and I get beat up or whatever. Playing hard is the ball right there, and you closer than me. But if I dive, I can get it.
Took hits from men who outweighed him by 100 pounds, crashed to the hardwood, and got up every time to do it again. He led the league in minutes because he refused to leave the floor, and that reckless, all-consuming courage was the whole reason a city fell in love with him. Still, the 76ers had won only 22 games, and a growing chorus insisted that Iverson was nothing more than a spectacular stat chaser who would never win anything that mattered. Could he prove them wrong? The turning point arrived in the form of a stubborn, brilliant, demanding head coach named Larry Brown, who took over in Philadelphia and set out to mold Iverson into a winner, whether Iverson liked it or not. The two clashed constantly because Brown wanted structure and discipline, while Iverson was pure improvisation and instinct. But the friction produced results.
Once I started to listen to Larry Brown and take constructive criticism, that's when I became an MVP. That's when I became an all-star. That's when I made first team All-NBA.
Iverson kept sharpening his game, leading the entire NBA in scoring for the 1998-1999 season and cementing himself as the most unstoppable little man in basketball. Slowly, under Brown's demanding hand, the Wild Score started learning how to bend an entire team toward victory, and Philadelphia transformed from a laughingstock into a genuine contender. He became the beating heart of a blue-collar city that saw its own grit reflected back in him, and the fans roared louder for him than for anyone the franchise had produced in years. All of it was building toward one magical season. In 2000 and 2001, everything came together. Iverson led the 76ers to a franchise record 10-0 start, powered them to 56 wins and the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and put together a campaign for the ages. He averaged a career-best 31 points a game to win the scoring title, led the league in steals, and was crowned the most valuable player of the entire NBA. The smallest and lightest man in the sport had just been named its best.
Allen picking up the NBA's MVP award today. He earned it. Allen led the league in scoring with better than 31 points per game. It's the second time in 3 years he's been the best go-to guy around.
This award means something to me because I did it my way. I never changed who I was. You know, I'm still the same person. I'm just smarter. I'm the MVP of this league, the best basketball players in the world.
But Iverson didn't do it alone, and that season proved he understood how to win, not just how to score. Larry Brown built a suffocating defense around his star, and the front office went out and added the missing piece by trading for towering shot blocker Dikembe Mutombo, who anchored the paint and went on to win Defensive Player of the Year. Around them, role players like Aaron McKie, who won Sixth Man of the Year, along with the gritty Eric Snow and the physical Tyrone Hill, gave Philadelphia exactly the kind of tough, defensive-minded supporting cast a scorer like Iverson needed. Larry Brown was named Coach of the Year, and the little team from Philadelphia became the story of the league. It was a perfect marriage. Iverson supplying the fire in the offense, Mutombo in the defense supplying the backbone. And now that group was carrying Philadelphia somewhere it hadn't been in nearly 2 decades, the NBA Finals. But standing in its way was a monster. That monster was the Los Angeles Lakers, a super team led by Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant that had steamrolled through the playoffs without losing a single game.
Iverson, 38 points, and the Sixers lead by 12.
Riding a 19-game winning streak into the finals. Nobody gave Iverson and the 76ers a real chance. It was supposed to be a coronation for Los Angeles. Then came June 6th, 2001, and Game 1 in Los Angeles, one of the most unforgettable individual performances in finals history. Iverson was everywhere, slicing through the Lakers defense, hitting shot after impossible shot, and pouring in 48 points against the heavy favorites. The signature moment came late with the game on the line when Iverson sized up Lakers guard Tyronn Lue in the corner, hit him with a crossover between his legs, rose into a fadeaway jumper, and drilled it as Lue stumbled to the floor. Then, in a gesture that would live forever, Iverson took an exaggerated step directly over Lue's body as he walked back up the court. It was defiance, it was disrespect, and it was the perfect symbol of a career spent stepping over everyone who ever doubted him. The 76ers won that game in overtime and snapped the Lakers' streak. For one night, the whole world believed the little man might pull off the impossible. What made it more remarkable is that Iverson dragged his team on that entire playoff run while battered and bruised, playing through a body that had been beaten down by an 82-game war of a season, wearing sleeves and wraps and refusing to use a single injury as an excuse. But basketball can be cruel, and talent eventually tells. Los Angeles regrouped, unleashed Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, and won the next 4 games in a row to take the championship.
Shaquille O'Neal beat us. And everybody talked about the Dikembe having a great series, but Shaq averaged like 30-something and 15.
Yeah.
And we tried and we couldn't deal with them, but all in all, they were just a better team than us.
Iverson's greatest season, the season he was named the best player alive, ended without the one thing he wanted more than anything in the world, a ring. Would he ever get that close again? The answer, painfully, was no, and the years that followed grew complicated. The following season, expectations were sky high, but the 76ers were eliminated in the first round by the Boston Celtics, and coach Larry Brown publicly questioned Iverson's commitment to practice. That criticism set the stage for one of the most famous press conferences in the history of American sports. On May 7th, 2002, an emotional and frustrated Iverson sat before the media and, in a rant that has been replayed millions of times, repeated the word practice over and over more than a dozen times.
We sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. Well, I mean, listen, we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
That sound like that's going to define him.
They used that to portray him as a person who didn't like practice. That was not what he was saying.
Your entire being now, your whole character is going to be this.
Incredulous that anyone wanted to talk about practice when he had left everything he had on the floor in real games that mattered. To most people, it became a punchline, a meme, a joke that followed him for the rest of his life. But almost nobody knew the truth underneath it. That same season, Iverson's closest childhood friend, Rahsaan Langford, had been murdered, and Iverson was drowning in grief.
My best friend had just got killed. Yeah, I was all tore up at that time, and then they turned it into something else. I'm upset for one reason, man, because I'm in here. I lost my best friend. I lost him, and then I'm dealing with this right here.
He was also being battered by constant trade rumors and he was watching his young daughter come home from school, having to answer questions about whether her father was getting shipped out of town. The rant that the world laughed at was actually the sound of a man in pain, defending his heart in the only way he knew how. And it revealed something that would define the rest of his career, a deep and permanent distrust of authority forged all the way back in that Virginia courtroom. For a while, Iverson kept producing at an elite level despite it all, remaining one of the most prolific scorers alive. Across his prime, he won 4 scoring titles, made 11 straight All-Star teams, and earned 2 All-Star Game MVP awards. And on one incredible night, he poured in 60 points in a single game, a career high that seemed impossible for someone his size. He never stopped playing with the same fearless, self-destructive intensity that made people love him, but the wins grew harder to come by, and the front office in Philadelphia decided it was time to move on. In December of 2006, after 4.5 years of trade rumors finally became real, the 76ers dealt Iverson to the Denver Nuggets, sending him alongside a return package that brought back Andre Miller, Joe Smith, and 2 first-round picks. In Denver, he was paired with a young scoring machine named Carmelo Anthony, forming one of the most explosive offensive duos in the league on paper.
Allen Iverson and Ivan McFarland to Denver for Andre Miller, Joe Smith, and 2 first-round picks.
As he closed one chapter of his career, he opened a new one in Denver where he would try to blend his talents with Carmelo Anthony and the Nuggets.
Yet the fit never fully clicked into a true contender, and the Nuggets couldn't get out of the early rounds of the playoffs. The clock was ticking on the little man who had given his body to the game for over a decade, and the league was starting to move on without him. The decline accelerated fast, and it was hard to watch. In November of 2008, Denver traded Iverson to the Detroit Pistons in exchange for Chauncey Billups, and it was a disaster almost from the start. The Pistons wanted Iverson to come off the bench, a role he had never played in his entire life and simply could not accept, because coming off the bench meant admitting he was no longer the man, and that was the one thing his pride would never allow.
If he comes back, he's coming off the bench. How well can he handle that role?
Any franchise players that come off the bench. I don't know any Olympian that come off the bench. I don't know any All-Star come off the bench. I don't know any family MVP that come off the bench.
The season dissolved into frustration and a leave of absence. At 33 years old, the athletic freak who had once outrun the entire NBA and made Michael Jordan stumble was suddenly a man the league didn't quite know what to do with. A legend caught in the cruel stretch of a career where the mind still believes, but the body and the circumstances no longer cooperate. He signed with the Memphis Grizzlies before the 2009-2010 season, hoping for a fresh start, but that too fell apart, and he played only 3 games there before walking away again, once more unwilling to accept a diminished role. It looked like the end, a quiet and undeserved fade out for one of the most beloved players of his era, but there was one place that would always welcome him home. Later that same 2009-2010 season, the Philadelphia 76ers brought Iverson back, and the city that had watched him grow up in the league embraced him one final time. His first game back, the arena erupted the way it had a decade earlier, because to Philadelphia, he was never just a player, he was one of their own, the little fighter who had bled for them for years.
I always dreamed about coming back to Philadelphia. It was a blessing from God, being able to come back here and, see that people wanted me as bad as they did.
When the All-Star starters were announced, fans around the country voted him in one last time, giving him a final moment in the sun that his fading play alone might not have earned, a pure gesture of love from a public that never stopped believing in him. For a brief stretch, it felt like a fairy tale, the prodigal son returning to the one place that would always be his home. But real life doesn't care about fairy tales. On February 22nd, 2010, Iverson stepped away from basketball indefinitely, and this time it had nothing to do with a coach or a role or a contract. His 4-year-old daughter, Messiah, had fallen seriously ill, later revealed to be a condition called Kawasaki disease, and Iverson chose his child over the game without a second thought.
My daughter was sick, and she was sick with Kawasaki disease.
I went in and talked to management and said, this is it, I can't do it no more. I'm not being fair to the fans, the organization, to myself, my teammates, nobody. You know what I mean? My family need me.
His final NBA game had come 2 days earlier, on February 20th, 2010, though nobody watching knew it at the time. He briefly played overseas in Turkey for a team called Beşiktaş the following season, wearing the number 4, but a calf injury cut it short. And after just a handful of games, his professional playing days were over. On October 30th, 2013, Allen Iverson officially announced his retirement from basketball. The Freak had finally run out of road, but look at what he left behind. Iverson finished his career averaging 26.7 points per game, one of the highest scoring averages in the history of the sport. And in the playoffs, he averaged nearly 30 a night, a number bettered by almost no one who has ever lived. He did all of that while being the smallest and lightest star on almost every floor he ever stepped onto, absorbing punishment that would have broken most players in half and refusing to sit down even when his body was screaming at him. In March of 2014, the 76ers retired his number 3 jersey to the rafters. And in 2016, he was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, taking his place among the immortals of the game. Yet the numbers and the honors only tell part of the story, because Iverson changed the entire culture of basketball. He walked into a buttoned-up league that wanted its stars to look and sound a certain way, and he showed up with cornrows, tattoos covering his arms, baggy clothes, gold chains, and the unfiltered sound of the streets he came from, and he refused to apologize for a single piece of it.
He didn't come out of Georgetown appealing to the hip-hop culture. This is just what evolved.
He wasn't all tattooed up like he is now. He didn't have the cornrows then.
The tattoos, the cornrows, were things that basketball players wanted to do, but didn't think they could.
I made a lot of them comfortable in their own skin and able to express themselves the way they want to.
The league didn't always know what to do with him, but the fans understood him instantly because he was real in a way that couldn't be manufactured. His signature Reebok shoes, stamped with his nickname The Answer, flew off the shelves, and Reebok eventually handed him a lifetime deal, a rare honor reserved for only the most transcendent icons. Hey, every generation of small, fearless guards that followed, every kid who grew up believing that heart could beat height owes a piece of that belief to what Iverson proved was possible. And that influence is everywhere you look today. The modern NBA is ruled by smaller, faster, ball-dominant guards who live in the paint and out beyond the arc, and nearly every one of them grew up studying the blueprint Iverson wrote. Stars like Stephen Curry, Kyrie Irving, and Damian Lillard have all pointed back to him as the man who made their kind of game possible.
Low-key, I've always wanted to be like Allen Iverson. That was the only way I could really come close.
The living proof that a guard did not need to be tall or physically imposing to be the single most dangerous player on the floor. He remains, all these years later, the shortest, most valuable player the league has ever crowned, a record that quietly captures just how impossible his career should have been. Even the moment that critics once used to mock him has aged into something else entirely. That practice rant, replayed and quoted and turned into a punchline for years, became one of the most recognizable pieces of sports culture ever recorded, echoed far outside of basketball by people who were not even alive when he said it. Iverson himself never found it funny because he knew the grief that was hiding underneath it, but the world eventually came to hear it as pure, unfiltered him. And when he finally stood on the stage in 2016 to accept his place in the Hall of Fame, the toughest man in basketball broke down in tears.
I just want to thank God for loving me and blessing me. I have no regrets on being the guy that I am and the person that my family love and my friends love. One of the best feelings in the world is being called an inspiration. If there's one person in this life that I save by my life story, then my job is done.
He turned to the coach who had taken a chance on a jailed teenager nobody else wanted, John Thompson, and thanked him for saving his life. Because without that single act of belief, none of it would have ever happened. The kid from Hampton who was told his story was finished had just been enshrined among the greatest to ever touch a basketball. He gave every kid who was ever told he was too small, too poor, or too different a reason to believe. Because when you strip it all down, Allen Iverson was living proof of a simple and dangerous idea. If you give an athletic freak a basketball and a heart that absolutely will not quit, size becomes just a number, and the whole world has to make room. He never won the championship he chased so desperately, and that emptiness will always be part of his story. But he won something that outlasts any trophy. He became the answer to a question the NBA didn't even know it was asking.